two opposite roads in the human heart. There's a question that quietly lingers in many hearts, especially among those who have tasted the sweetness of success. There's a silent emptiness, a sense of standing on top of the mountain with no one to share the view. That feeling makes us wonder, have I been walking down the right road all along? Self-importance, and self-image. It whispers, I need more. I must stand out. I can't let anyone surpass me. This drive can fuel incredible achievements and help us conquer great heights. But it comes at a cost. When all our efforts revolve around protecting and inflating the self, we slowly build invisible walls between ourselves and the rest of the world. Our sense of worth begins to depend on applause, titles, and numbers, and when those fade, insecurity creeps back in. Compassion, on the other hand, doesn't seek to lift us up by pushing others down. It doesn't chase the spotlight. Instead, it finds fulfillment in moments of genuine connection. With compassion, we see people not just as colleagues, customers, or competitors, but as fellow human beings carrying joys, sorrows, hopes, and fears just like ours. Compassion doesn't measure what it gives, it knows that when the heart opens, both the giver and the receiver are nourished. The irony is that society often celebrates victories achieved through ego. We grow up in a world where these two roads constantly pull at our hearts. One is the steep slope of competition, where speed and ambition decide our position. The other is the softer path of presence and mindfulness, where each step is taken with awareness, making sure no soul walking beside us is left behind. Some people ask, if I only live with compassion, won't I get left behind? That question comes from fear of losing, of being taken advantage of. But true compassion is not weakness. In fact, it requires more strength than any race to the top. To live compassionately, we must win the hardest battles, the ones inside ourselves. We must overcome the urge to outshine. In how we respond to a text, how we react to criticism, how we treat a waiter when we're in a rush. Each action, no matter how small, moves us toward one path or the other. In youth, that's when compassion begins to speak. It doesn't shout or rush, but flows steadily like an underground stream, softening the dry soil of loneliness and self-absorption. Yet walking the road of compassion requires courage. It asks us to face our unhealed wounds, our fear of being left out, our pain from being undervalued. Often, ego becomes the armor we wear to hide those scars. But over time, that armor becomes a prison. And so, the question remains, which road leads to true happiness? The answer may not be the same for everyone. But one truth is universal, happiness isn't just about how much we receive, it's about how much our hearts have opened. Success without connection will always leave an empty space. Even small steps toward compassion can fill that space with warmth and peace. Every moment in life, we stand at a crossroads, to nurture the ego or to nurture compassion. Each choice shapes a journey. And perhaps, true happiness is not a final destination at all, but the lightness we feel with every step, knowing we're walking a road that's true to our heart. Understanding the ego, the creator of invisible distance. There is a companion that's been with us since the day we were born, quietly growing alongside us through every experience, every wound, every joy, and every fear. It has no physical form, no real name, yet it finds a way to slip into every thought and every decision we make. In modern language, we call it the ego. The ego is not our true nature. It's a constructed identity, a kind of armor we unknowingly build to survive, to be recognized, and to have a place in the world. It is the inner voice that whispers, me, mine, for me. At first, there seems to be nothing wrong with it. In fact, the ego can help us survive, to protect ourselves from danger, to distinguish me from others. But over time, that voice grows louder, drowning out the stillness within, and begins to build invisible walls that separate us from real connection with life. The ego loves to compare. It makes us see other people as mirrors reflecting our own worth. When someone succeeds, the ego whispers, "Why are they ahead of me? I need to try harder." When someone fails, it says, "At least I'm better than them." Slowly, the ego turns the world into a constant scoreboard, where happiness depends on where we stand in relation to others. The ego also loves to judge. Every judgment creates an invisible gap. We put others into mental boxes, locking them inside, and refuse to see them as living beings with depth and complexity. Another habit of the ego is overprotecting the self. Even a small piece of feedback can make it throw up its defenses, justifying, counterattacking, or shutting down. The ego hates to lose or feel less than, so it's always on guard. But this constant guarding comes at a cost: exhaustion. We live as if we're in a never-ending battle. Not against the outside world, but against the shadows within ourselves. What happens when we let the ego lead for too long? First, isolation. When the ego grows too strong, we stop truly seeing others, and we stop letting them truly see us. We show them a polished, edited version of ourselves, carefully curated to protect our image. This makes connection shallow. And even in a crowded room, we can feel utterly alone. Next, pressure. The ego is never satisfied. No matter how much we achieve, it always wants more. Every success becomes just another stepping stone toward the next goal. We get caught in a loop of not enough, not rich enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough. Allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and authentic. But the ego fears this deeply. It worries that if we expose our weaknesses, we'll be judged or hurt. The ego is often compared to a thick cloud hiding the sun of wisdom and compassion that already exists within us. That sun never disappears, but as long as the clouds remain dense, its light can't fully shine through. Through mindfulness and meditation, we learn that the ego is not an enemy to destroy, but an illusion to see through. We begin to recognize that it's simply a temporary construct, shaped by memories, experiences, and thought patterns, and the moment we see it clearly, we are less bound by it. Here's the paradox. The ego creates distance to protect us, but that very distance is what causes our suffering. It builds a fortress, and then locks us inside. Letting go of the ego doesn't mean abandoning ourselves, it means opening the gates so we can return to our true nature, pure, spacious, and loving. When we learn to notice the ego in our thoughts and reactions, we create space for choice. Instead of immediately comparing, we can genuinely celebrate someone else's success. Instead of judging, we can choose curiosity. Instead of building walls, we can open doors. Each time we do this, we thin the clouds a little more, letting the inner sunlight come through. One day, we may realize that the invisible distance no longer has a hold on us. We are still ourselves, but no longer trapped in the narrow frame of the ego. We can stand in the middle of the world, without needing to be better than anyone, without needing to prove anything, and still feel completely whole. In that space, loneliness fades. True compassion, as the Buddha taught, is a deep and genuine wish to alleviate the suffering of others. It is not born out of superiority, not, "I help you because I am better," but out of recognition, "Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy." In Buddhism, compassion, karu, is inseparable from wisdom, prajna. Without wisdom, compassion can easily become sentimentality. They form the two wings of the bird that carries the heart toward liberation. When you truly see another person's suffering, not just their outward struggle, but the quiet ache hidden beneath their words, something inside you shifts. The walls of separation begin to dissolve. It is as if the invisible boundaries drawn by the ego melt away. And you remember that we are not strangers to one another. We are travelers on the same road, each carrying our own burdens, yet each capable of lightening another's load. Neuroscience confirms what ancient wisdom already knew: acts of compassion activate parts of the brain linked to happiness, calm, and connection. When you extend compassion, your own heart softens. Your mind becomes lighter, and your sense of isolation fades. You no longer feel like a separate, lonely self navigating a hostile world. You feel like a part of something larger. Something alive and interconnected. And yet, compassion is not always easy. It requires the courage to open your heart even when it might get hurt, to care for those who may never thank you. To see beyond someone's harsh words or rough exterior and touch the tender humanity inside. Compassion becomes a spiritual practice, a mirror showing you your own growing capacity to love without conditions. In the Buddhist path, cultivating compassion begins with mindfulness. Without trying to fix everything, simply being present. This presence is already a form of healing. Sometimes, the greatest act of compassion is not to give advice or material help, but to truly see someone and let them know they matter. Over time, living with compassion changes the way you relate to the world. You stop seeing people as obstacles, competitors, or strangers. You see them as fellow beings who, like you, are trying to navigate life's challenges. You understand that behind every unkind act lies confusion, behind every outburst lies pain. And behind every mask lies a human heart longing to be loved and understood. And here is the paradox: in giving compassion, you receive the very thing you thought you were offering. The more you open your heart, the more joy and peace you discover within yourself. This is why compassion is called the bridge of the heart. It connects not only you to others, but also you to your own deepest nature, a nature that is already vast, radiant, and free. If ego builds walls, compassion builds bridges. And every time you choose compassion over judgment, you place another stone on that bridge, making the path between hearts a little shorter, a little stronger, and a little more beautiful. In walking this path, you find that happiness is not something you must chase. It arises naturally when your heart beats in rhythm with the hearts of all beings. When ego and compassion collide. In the flow of daily life, there are countless moments where these two forces, ego and compassion, meet head-on. They are like two currents in the same river, one pulling toward self-protection and separation, the other toward openness and connection. Imagine a workplace conflict. A colleague criticizes your idea in a meeting. Instantly, the ego rises like a reflex, whispering, "They don't respect you. You need to defend yourself. Prove them wrong." This is the ego's way, quick, reactive, and fiercely protective of its identity. But compassion hears a different story. It pauses, sensing the possible insecurities or pressures the other person might be facing. It asks, "Is this really about me? Or is there pain behind their words?" Or take a family argument. Ego wants the last word. It needs to be right, to win, to protect pride. Compassion, on the other hand, values the relationship more than the argument. It's willing to step back, listen deeply, and choose words that heal rather than wound. Even in competition, whether in business, sports, or creative work, the ego frames others as threats. It feeds comparison, jealousy, and the subtle wish to see others fail. Compassion recognizes that another's success does not diminish your own worth. It finds joy in others' achievements because it understands that happiness multiplies when shared. The Buddha often spoke about the two arrows of suffering. The first arrow is the inevitable pain of life, criticism, loss, disappointment. The second arrow is self-inflicted, our ego's reaction, resentment, anger, defensiveness. Compassion is the skill of not shooting that second arrow. In every moment of conflict, you have a choice. Ego will feel natural, it's a survival instinct honed over lifetimes. Compassion will feel harder at first, it requires stillness, patience, and humility. But while ego wins the moment, compassion wins the heart. So next time you feel the heat of disagreement rising, pause. Feel the fork in the road. One path will close you off, the other will open you. One will protect your pride, the other will nourish your soul. Which will you choose? Memories, preferences, and habits. We spend our lives polishing this construct, defending it, and trying to make it look admirable in the eyes of others. Yet, this self is like a mirage in the desert. It appears real from a distance, but the closer you look, the more it dissolves. Clinging to the ego is like holding a burning coal in your hand. And the burn deepens. We suffer not because of the world outside, but because of the illusion we refuse to release inside. The Buddha didn't ask us to destroy the self, but to see through it. When you realize that your ego is a story, not your essence, a vast space opens up inside you. You become less defensive, less reactive. You stop seeing every situation as a personal threat or validation. Life becomes lighter. This is where compassion becomes our guide. Compassion doesn't just mean being nice. It is the deep understanding that all beings are caught in the same web of illusion, chasing after happiness but often grasping at the very things that bring suffering. When you see this clearly, your heart naturally softens. You no longer feel the need to protect your ego at all costs. Instead, you extend a hand, not because it makes you look good. You discover something far greater, a self that is vast, open, and connected to all life. It's not the fragile me that fears being ignored or disrespected. It's the boundless awareness that can hold joy and sorrow without being shattered by either. This is the heart of Buddhist practice, to live in a way that sees through the illusion of I, while nurturing the truth of our shared humanity. When you drop the coal, your hands are free. Free to create, to embrace, to give, and to receive. And in that freedom, you find the happiness the ego has been chasing all along, but could never truly hold. Compassion transforms us from the inside out. Let's begin with the mind. Living in a fast-paced, competitive world, stress often becomes our constant companion. Anxiety and even depression can slowly creep into our lives when we are too focused on ourselves, our worries, our image, our success. But compassion shifts our attention outward. When we truly care for someone else, even for a moment, the mental storm inside us quiets down. We are no longer the center of the universe. Instead, we become part of a shared human experience. That perspective alone can lift a tremendous weight from the mind. In Buddhist practice, cultivating compassion is a way to dissolve the boundaries that the ego creates. When those walls fall, we naturally feel lighter. Neuroscience now shows that acts of kindness, whether big or small, trigger the release of feel-good chemicals in the brain, such as oxytocin and dopamine. These are sometimes called the happiness hormones, and they can ease symptoms of anxiety, improve our mood, and even help us feel more connected to life itself. Compassion also has a profound effect on the body. Studies reveal that people who regularly engage in compassionate acts have lower blood pressure, healthier heart rhythms, and stronger immune systems. It's as if the body recognizes compassion as a safe state, turning off the alarm signals of chronic stress. Sleep improves, digestion works more smoothly, and even pain levels can decrease. The body thrives when the heart is open. From a Buddhist perspective, this makes perfect sense. The Buddha taught that greed, anger, and ignorance disturb both the mind and the body. Compassion, on the other hand, calms the inner fire, bringing harmony to our entire being. When we hold others in kindness, we also hold ourselves in a state of peace. Modern science calls it the helper's high, the uplifting, energizing feeling we get after giving or helping. Buddhism simply calls it dana, generosity, and metta, loving kindness. Regardless of the term, the result is the same: giving heals the giver. And here's something important to remember: compassion is not about pity or feeling superior to others. True compassion sees no hierarchy. It's the recognition that we all suffer, and that our joy is deeply linked to the joy of others. When we help ease another's pain, we are also tending to the collective wound we all share. So if you want to reduce stress, sleep better. Begin with yourself, speak kindly to your own mind, and let that kindness overflow to others. The more you give, the more life will flow back into you. Compassion is not just a virtue. It's a bridge between spiritual awakening and physical well-being, a bridge that every one of us can walk, starting today. Practical steps to shift from ego to compassion. Step 1. Recognize when ego is in control. The first and most important step is awareness. You can't change what you don't see. Ego often shows up subtly, through defensiveness, the urge to prove yourself. It's not about shaming yourself for having ego, it's about simply noticing, here it is. My mind is trying to protect the image of me. When you can name ego's presence, you create a space between your awareness and your reactions. That space is where freedom begins. Step 2, pause, breathe, and ask the key question. Once you've recognized ego's voice, don't rush into action or words. Instead, take a slow, conscious breath. In that pause, ask yourself, will this choice benefit everyone involved, or is it only serving me? This question acts like a compass, pointing you back toward compassion. The Buddha often taught that before speaking or acting, we should ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If the answer doesn't align with kindness and wisdom, it's often a sign the ego is steering the ship. Step 3, choose compassion-driven action. Compassion isn't weakness, it's strength in its most refined form. Choosing compassion means responding with understanding instead of judgment. Patience instead of irritation, generosity instead of self-protection. This could be as simple as listening without interrupting during an argument, offering help without expecting credit. These 3 steps reshape the very way you experience life. When you live from compassion, you notice that conflicts dissolve faster, relationships deepen, and your inner world feels lighter. The more you act from compassion, the more you see that the ego's boundaries are illusions. The separation between me and you starts to blur, revealing a shared humanity and a shared journey. A practice worth returning to. You won't always get it right. Ego will still sneak in, sometimes louder than ever. But every moment is a new chance to notice, pause, and choose again. In Buddhist meditation, we say, gently return. Whether it's the breath, compassion, or awareness, the practice is always about coming back, not about being perfect. And each time you return to compassion, you plant a seed in your heart and in the hearts of those around you, a seed that, over time, can grow into a life rooted in connection, kindness, and genuine freedom. An inspiring Buddhist story, Compassion Beyond Boundaries. In a small monastery nestled deep in the mountains, there lived a humble monk known for his quiet demeanor and unwavering kindness. He never sought recognition, nor did he try to prove his virtue. His life was simple, tending the garden, sweeping the courtyard, and reciting the sutras. Yet, his heart carried a vast ocean of compassion. One day, news spread that a band of thieves had been raiding villages nearby. The monastery was warned to stay alert, and fear began to ripple through the monks. They took turns guarding the gates, ready to call for help if trouble came. Then, on a stormy night, the monk heard frantic banging on the wooden doors. When he opened them, he found a man soaked to the bone, trembling from the cold. His clothes were torn, and a deep wound bled along his arm. The monk recognized his face instantly. This was the leader of the thieves, the very man the villagers feared. Instinctively, the ego's voice whispered, "This is the enemy. He deserves punishment." But another voice, deeper and quieter, spoke from the monk's heart, "Here stands a human being in pain." Without a word, the monk helped him inside, lit a fire, and cleaned his wound. He prepared hot tea and offered the man his own robe to keep warm. The thief, stunned by this unexpected kindness, asked, "Why would you help me? I've taken so much from others." The monk smiled gently. "Because suffering does not choose sides. Today, it is you who suffers. If I can ease that suffering, then I must. They spoke through the night, about fear, regret, and the longing for peace. By dawn, the thief left without taking anything from the monastery. Days later, word arrived that he had returned the stolen goods to the villages and disappeared into the mountains, never to steal again. The message is simple yet profound. True compassion does not discriminate between friend and foe. When the heart is free from the boundaries of us and them, even the hardest walls of hatred can crumble. Buddhism teaches that compassion is not weakness, it is strength in its purest form. It sees beyond the labels we attach to people. It reaches into the shared humanity beneath the layers of fear, anger, and pride. And in doing so, it transforms not only the receiver but also the giver. When you choose compassion over revenge, you do not just change someone else's life, you change your own. Compassion doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger. One of the biggest misunderstandings in our modern world is the belief that compassion is a sign of weakness. Compassion is not weakness at all, it is one of the greatest signs of inner strength. Why? Because compassion requires you to rise above your ego. The ego thrives on pride, defensiveness, and self-protection. When someone hurts you, your ego's first instinct is to retaliate, to prove you're right, or to shield yourself from further pain. Compassion asks you to take a different path, to put aside your immediate impulses and respond from a place of understanding, patience, and love. That is not an easy thing to do. It's about responding with clarity and wisdom, rather than with anger or fear. A compassionate person can still set firm boundaries, speak their truth, and stand up for what is right, but they do so without hatred in their heart. This is the key difference. Hatred drains you. Compassion strengthens you. Think of a mountain. It does not collapse in the face of storms. It remains steady, rooted, and unshaken, yet it does not harden into something lifeless. It continues to give life to rivers, forests, and animals. True compassion is like that mountain, grounded in strength, yet endlessly life-giving. When you choose compassion, you are not surrendering your power. You are reclaiming it from the control of your ego. You're proving that your inner peace cannot be stolen by another person's anger, cruelty, or ignorance. This kind of strength inspires others. It shifts the energy in conflicts. It has the power to transform not just relationships, but entire communities. When you see yourself in another, even in someone who opposes you, you understand that their suffering is connected to yours. And when you act from that understanding, your actions carry a healing energy far greater than any act of retaliation could ever achieve. So the next time someone mistakes your compassion for weakness, remember this truth. It takes far more strength to remain kind in the face of cruelty than it does to lash out. It is easy to react, it is hard to pause. It is easy to hate, it is hard to love when love feels undeserved. And winning the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you stayed true to your highest self. That is real power. That is real strength. And it's a power that no one can take away from you. Compassion ripples outward, sometimes in ways you'll never see, sometimes in ways that return to you years later. This is not about pretending to be nice or ignoring your own needs. True compassion flows from a place of inner strength, where you no longer see yourself as separate from others. When you understand that all beings share the same longing to be safe, loved, and free from suffering, your actions begin to reflect that truth. And here's the beautiful part. Compassion doesn't just change how you feel inside, it changes the world around you. It softens conflicts, dissolves misunderstandings, and builds bridges where there were walls. It transforms strangers into friends and turns enemies into teachers. So, try this. Live one day with the intention to choose compassion in every moment. Whether you're speaking to a loved one, a stranger, or even someone who challenges you, pause and ask yourself. I invite you to join our community on this journey of living with an open heart. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring Buddhist wisdom and mindful living together. And I would love to hear from you. Share your thoughts or an experience where compassion changed something in your life in the comments below.